Hi, it's time for story time with Nana Lynn and Glow. Right now, Glow is sleeping. So I thought I would get some books on and we'll see what we can do. Today, we are reading, oh, there's the kitty. He's going to join us today. We're reading Little Toot on the Thames. As you can see, he's a tugboat. And it's by Hardy Gramatke. However they say that. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure I butchered that name, but this book came from my childhood. I love this book. So let's get started and find out what Little Toot is doing. All right. In a busy harbor, there lives a tugboat known as Little Toot. He is a friendly tug with a cheerful whistle, but he is very small. He is too small to do the work of other tugs. They work hard all day, pushing and shoving big boats about, while Little Toot never gets a chance. Well, one day Little Toot decided that he would try to tow a boat all by himself. Little Toot seems like a determined little guy, doesn't he? With no one to stop him, he ventured far out to sea. There he caught the tow line of a tramp steamer. When he began to tow, he pulled and pulled with all his strength. He pulled until he was blue in the face. But alas, poor Little Toot, he didn't know much about towing. All the while he thought he was towing the tramp steamer. The tramp steamer was towing him. Oh no. Oh no, Little Toot, I think you're going to get into trouble. We'll find out. And across the wide ocean, too. It was bound to end badly. And it did. When they reached a distant shore, the tramp steamer just abandoned the little tug. Look at that, he just cut him loose. Oh my. All alone in a strange world, Little Toot had only one thought: how to get home again. It was a gray, foggy world, and the little tug didn't know which way to turn. Instead, he sat there in silence. His large round smoke balls billowed up into the fog like dumplings in a thick stew. Look at that. Poor guy, he must be very frightened. Sadly, though, he thought of home. He thought of his father, Big Toot, and of Grandfather Toot, and of all his friends. He wondered if he would ever see them again. Out of the fog, two eyes twinkled dimly through the mist. They belonged to an old barge Little Toot began to see. It was a Thames River barge, a rare vessel, but one he had heard about many times. With a voice like a foghorn, the old barge said, "Use your hooter in the fog, or you may find yourself in a muddle." Little Toot did not know what a hooter was. Then he remembered that he wasn't at home. A hooter must be a horn. "If you want to go back to your home," the old barge told him, "you'll have to go to see the Queen. She can help you get home." That was a good idea. With a stout heart, Little Toot set out on his journey to find the Queen. The old barge pointed the way through the mist. Excuse me. Little Toot had to peer carefully before him. Who knew what strange things might be lurking ahead? The fog gradually lifted, and weird shapes began to appear. Mechanical monsters with long, scrawny arms rose up from the edge of the river. Docks and wharves creaked, and chugging sounds, and Little Toot heard the rattle of chains. Oh my. Before he knew what was happening, he was entirely surrounded by monsters, their long arms reaching skyward. Some were loading cargo from barges into freighters, and some were unloading cargo from freighters into barges. It was a busy place, and all the while a tough gang of tugs pushed and shoved their way into the confusion. They paid no attention to a greenhorn like little Toot. He wasn't wanted there, and little Toot saw a good reason why. A brilliant red barge flying a danger flag was being loaded with explosives. It was enough to frighten anyone. Little Toot threaded his way between cables and tow lines in a frantic effort to get away. He hoped never to see this place again. At last he was free. The sun had cut through the haze, and there before him stretched a bridge with towers. It must be a gateway to somewhere, thought little Toot. Since its drawbridge was already drawn, the little tugboat quickly slipped through. Little Toot knew he was heading in the right direction, because it was beginning to be a beautiful world. Soon he must look for the Queen. Tooting past a castle on his right, he felt bolder and more himself again. Then he came to London Bridge, the best-known bridge in the world. Gay crowds passed overhead and tossed him friendly greetings. See, they're all waving at him. Hi, hi. Even the boats on the river towing their barges upstream seemed in a holiday mood as they jostled each other joyfully. Little Toot thought it must be a holiday, for along the embankment marched a group of grenadiers, as sturdy and straight as a set of tin soldiers. Then came the horse guards, and then a golden coach. Wide-eyed in amazement, little Toot bounced cheerfully along. It was like being in a real fairy tale. It was pretty wonderful, too. For a little tugboat that was used to seeing only docks and wharves, he forgot entirely about going home. He had time for a number of things, and there was still so much to explore. Much further along the river, it dwindled in size. Grass grew green along its banks. Rounding a bend, little Toot came upon a happy crowd. There were dinghies and punts and pleasure boats, all having a wonderful time. But little Toot was sure he was welcome. He joined in the fun. The boats went round and round. Small ones, large ones, they all went around. Bagpipes squealed and trumpets blared. Boats swished up the water and splashed each other, and they all had a merry old time. Little Toot was having such a merry time that he never even saw the pleasure boats stop playing. They had all pulled to the side of the river. Poor little Toot. He was right in the middle of the boat race course, and 3 racing boats were headed his way. Oh my, that could be a problem. No one thought to tell little Toot that he was in the way. Instead, the happy little tug went right on circling about until, without thinking, he had formed a large figure 8 in the river. To make things even worse, he was followed by a group of swans. Oh dear. And the figure 8 took up most of the river. There was no room at all for the racing boats to pass. Oh dear. Boats and swans and crewmen all wound up in a hullabaloo. Oh dear. That did it. Little Toot was in terrible disgrace, and everyone told him to go home. He only wished he could go home. He longed to be home again, and now it was too late for anything, and there was no one to whom he could turn. Suddenly, out of the shadows of the river came a familiar voice calling his name. It was a sound he would know anywhere. There, lying alongside a wharf, was the old Tramp Steamer. He was all steamed up for a voyage, yet he was unable to move away from the dock. "Grab a tow line, pal, and help me get out of here," he said in a friendly voice. "I'll see that you get home if you do." Little Toot was overjoyed at the thought of going home. Eagerly he made fast to the tow line and began to pull. Slowly they moved away from the wharf. We have another kitty here trying to come in and listen to the story. Yes. Now picking his way among barges and lighters, Little Toot towed and steered carefully. He was careful, too, not to awaken the tough old tugs. No telling what they would do if aroused. But it was the Tramp Steamer Little Toot should have worried about. Now that the old villain no longer needed help, he rudely shoved the little tugboat aside. Then, showing his true colors, he headed for the open river without so much as a thank you. As luck would have it, he got tangled in the lines of a barge. And it was the red barge, too, and still flying the danger flag. The barge was dragged into midstream. There it caught in a swift current, tore loose from the Tramp Steamer, and capsized. The old Tramp Steamer headed downriver and hardly looked back. The dangerous barge sank without a sound. It was a dreadful thing to happen. Any seaman worth his salt would know what a disaster to the river traffic this could be. Little Toot knew what he had to do. Through the long night he stood guard over the sunken barge. The small red light on his port side blinked on and off like a channel marker, keeping ships at a distance. When dawn broke over London, Little Toot was still at his post, almost too tired to move. Suddenly, bells from Big Ben began to ring. Flags went up on the Tower Bridge. This heralded a great celebration. The celebration is sure to be here on the Thames, Little Toot thought, and the sunken barge is right in the way. Frantically, the little tugboat sent up a volley of smoke balls. Frantically, he tooted his whistle, but try as hard as he would, he could not attract the attention of anyone. Something had to be done, and right away. There was only one way of getting attention, but Little Toot shuddered to think of it. It had always gotten him into trouble before. Still, he had to take a chance. With a burst of speed, the little tugboat shot out across the river, circled back around by the sunken barge, and completed a large figure 8. In no time at all, fireboats and river police came scurrying, with sirens screaming. The sunken barge was raised and carefully hauled away. Then downstream came a gallant procession of boats. Leading the flotilla was none other than the Royal Barge. It was a great celebration, and after it was all over, Little Toot was given a fine ovation. Even the tough old tugs joined in with a rollicking cheer. Then Little Toot got his wish to go home, and true to the prediction of the old Thames River barge, it was the Queen who helped him. For the good ship Queen Elizabeth herself escorted him all the way home. And look at the sign, "Welcome home, Little Toot." Well, I hope you enjoyed Little Toot's adventure. And I don't know about you, but I think for me, it's time to say goodnight. I'll see you in the next video. Or Glow will, or maybe both of us. Good night.